Design Biology Forensic Evaluation Protocol, DBFEP, a tool for auditing scientific arguments. Hello, everyone. Dr. Dan Mason here with my new Design Biology Forensic Evaluation Protocol, which is a method for reading scientific writing with discipline. It separates what a passage actually shows from what it infers, what it demonstrates from what it assumes, and what is testable from what is declared as a rule. The protocol does not argue for a designer. It serves as epistemic hygiene. Anyone can copy the rules and apply them to any paragraph from a book, paper, or post to see what holds up. This is Part 2. The protocol includes gated meta-modules that run only when the passage contains Level 5-7 claims, closure, necessity, blanket immunity, or authority swaps. These modules stay text-bound. Each answer uses an anchor phrase from the passage. Paradigm pressure check uses Kuhn and Popper. It tags when a passage defends a framework by absorbing tension instead of risking failure. It asks if the passage covers missing detail with framing instead of stating bridge requirements and a same-level disconfirmer. It asks if the passage treats its interpretation as decisive without stating the incompatibility condition it relies on. It asks if the passage scales a mechanism to system-level sufficiency while leaving bridge requirements implicit. It gives paradigm pressure flags from 0 to 3. The research program audit uses Lakatos. It tags whether the passage advances a progressive research program or a degenerating one. It identifies the hard core. It classifies belt modifications as progressive or ad hoc. It checks for novel predictions. It gives Lakatos flags from 0 to 3. Method pluralism check uses Feyerabend. It tags when a passage enforces one method or theory and excludes others. It asks if method monopoly is claimed. It asks how rival approaches are treated. It asks if rule breaking is acknowledged. It gives Feyerabend flags from 0 to 3. Problem-solving audit uses Lawden. It tags whether the passage shows its framework solves more problems than rivals. It lists problems claimed. It notes residuals. It checks comparative advantage. It gives Lawden flags from 0 to 3. Symmetry and credibility. Check uses Bloor and Chapin. It tags when a passage treats its view as socially privileged instead of subjecting it to the same scrutiny as rivals. It asks if privilege rests on social markers. It asks if treatment is symmetric. It asks if the social cause is acknowledged. It gives credibility flags from 0 to 3. Actor network audit uses Latour. It forces the passage to show the chain of actors that makes the claim durable. It asks if the chain of allies is visible. It asks about translation and enrollment. It asks if the black box is reopened. It asks if the passage acts as a fact-maker or fact-taker. It gives Latour flags from 0 to 4. Situated knowledge's audit uses Haraway. It identifies passages that claim to have a vision from nowhere, rather than acknowledging their partial perspective. It asks if the God trick is present. It asks if partiality is owned. It asks if accountability for position is given. It asks if a cyborg or modest alliance is built. It gives Haraway flags from 0 to 4. Standpoint check uses Harding. It tags when a passage ignores standpoint bias or benefits from a dominant position. It asks about the position of the knower. It asks if the marginalized view is considered. It asks whose interests are served. It gives Harding flags from 0 to 3. Tacit knowledge check uses Collins. It tags when a passage treats a mechanism as fully explicit while hiding tacit skills. It asks if a tacit element is present. It asks about replication transparency. It asks if replicability risk is acknowledged. It gives Collins flags from 0 to 3. The Mangle of Practice check uses Pickering. It tags when a passage presents a smooth process instead of acknowledging resistance. It asks if resistance is acknowledged. It asks if accommodation is described. It asks if Mangle is visible. It gives Pickering flags from 0 to 3. Trust and witness check uses Chapin. It tags passages that rely on social trust rather than explicit evidence. It asks if a witness is invoked. It asks if the trust basis is stated. It asks if the trust network is visible. It gives Chapin flags from 0 to 3. Discourse power check uses Foucault. It tags when a passage enforces a discourse that produces truth and excludes others. It asks whether the discourse object has been formed. It asks about the exclusion mechanism. It asks if the power effect is visible. It gives Foucault flags from 0 to 3. The protocol concludes with a severe test upgrade. Pick one integrated biological system. Pre-register a stepwise pathway with defined intermediates. Specify constraints such as coordination requirements, interface compatibility, timing limits, and fidelity limits if regulation is required. Identify disconfirming evidence that necessitates revision instead of merely patching the narrative. This method gives a calm, repeatable way to see what scientific writing really shows. It rewards claims that risk failure and name their limits. It flags when confidence comes from framing instead of tests. Anyone can apply it. The goal is clearer reading, not winning arguments. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and follow to learn more.